Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Ogbanje Joseph. Please subscribe to this channel, share, like, as well as drop a comment on the comment section. So today we're going to be looking at diplomatic nomenclature. That is the topic of our discussion today. Diplomatic nomenclature. The word diplomat has been used in a loose and rather general sense to include all members of the foreign services of all nations, and particularly those acting as chief of mission. However, not all diplomacy are carried out by diplomats. Now, in a sense, every citizen of a state who travels to another country is a diplomat. Sometimes not a very good, or skillful one. In a professional sense, diplomats include two main groups. Number one is diplomatic officers and consular officers. Okay. Now, number one is diplomatic officers, and number two is consular officers. Now, all the diplomatic functions which have been described, okay, in our previous videos are performed, to a greater or lesser degree by those groups. But generally speaking, diplomatic officials specialize in representation and negotiation, whereas consular officials, are particularly concerned with the protection of the interest of the national of their country. Now, reporting is another important function of both groups. Now, let us look at classification of diplomats. Now, the success or otherwise of diplomacy in any nation state depends, greatly upon the choice of its diplomatic officers, their abilities and competence, to discharge their duties accordingly. The designation of diplomatic officers to assist in implanting the foreign policy of a particular country started in March 17, 1815 during the Congress of Vienna, and was later publicized in the Supplementary Rule of Congress of Aix-la-Chapelle on November 21, 1818. According to the Supplementary of Congress of Aix-la-Chapelle, four distinctive categories of diplomatic officers were established, and they include: number one, ambassadors, legate and nuncios; number two, envoys, ministers, or persons accredited to sovereigns; number three, ministers resident accredited to sovereigns; then number four, charge d'affaires accredited to the ministers, for foreign affairs. Now, the classification has helped governments of one country in accrediting another, an envoy to another country, to actually indicate in brackets the class or category, in accordance with the 1815 to 1818 classification. Now, it should be noted, okay, that the privileges of diplomatic agents may be the same materially, but they differ in rank and honor and are therefore treated separately. Ambassadors are personal representatives of the governments of their nation states. The title of excellence is attached to ambassadors because they can always ask for an audience from the president or the head of state of the state, head of government of the state, to which they are accredited. Now, the ministers and envoys, okay, are not seen as personal representatives of their states because they cannot at all times ask for an audience with the president or head of state of the country to which they are accredited. Hence, they do not enjoy all the special honor accredited the ambassadors. Again, unlike ambassadors who receive the title of excellency by right, ministers are accorded, such title only, by courtesy. Now, next to that is actually the class of diplomatic officers, are next to the class of diplomatic officers are ministers, presidents, who enjoy less honor and cannot be titled excellency even by courtesy. The next category is charge d'affaires, who, unlike the others, accredited from one head of government to another, to another head of government, is usually accredited by one foreign office, to another. Their level of honor is also lower. According to Article 2 of the Vienna Convention of February 20, 1928, that is Havana Convention of February 20, 1928, diplomatic officers can further be classified as ordinary and extraordinary. Those who represent the government of one country in another, on permanent basis are classified as ordinary, and those who are fully entrusted with a special mission or accredited to represent the government of one country in international conferences and congresses or international organizations are classified as extraordinary. For purposes of classification, all the envoys accredited to a particular country constitute a body known as the diplomatic corps, usually headed by the doyen, that is the oldest ambassador. The body acts as a watchdog over the rights, privileges, and honors accorded envoys. The classes of diplomatic agents, exchanged between two countries are usually agreed between the governments concerned, the government concerned. Customarily, agents of the same class are exchanged. Now, let us look at diplomatic personnel. Now, the title High Commission is the same thing as ambassador. The ambassador or High Commissioner is referred to as the head of mission or principal representative. He has the responsibility he has the responsibility for overall execution of diplomatic functions. Thus, top positions in diplomatic service are held by chiefs of mission, most of whom have the rank of ambassador or high commission or minister. Now, the various ranks of the diplomats who form the diplomatic hierarchy are still based on rules agreed on at the Congress of Vienna in 1815. The number of ambassadors, the highest diplomatic officers, has greatly increased in recent years. The United States, for example, refused to appoint any ambassador until 1893 because it was felt that this title was too suggestive of monarchical diplomacy. Until very recently, the United States had more ministers than ambassadors abroad. But today, there are only a few ministers in the American Foreign Service. Ambassadors and ministers together constitute only a fraction of the total number of diplomats, most of whom are career officials or non-career specialists. Unlike the upper diplomatic hierarchy, there's no agreed basis, for classifying all these lesser, diplomats. But at least 3 ranks are widely recognized. What are those ranks, that are recognized? Number 1 is counselors of embassy or legation, who rank highest among diplomatic staff members. Number 2 is secretaries of an embassy or legation, usually ranked as first. Second and third secretaries and attaches, who may be junior career officers or non-career persons serving in a diplomatic capacity on a temporary basis, including commercial, agricultural, military, naval, air, petroleum, cultural, press, and other attaches. Now, within the generally acceptable framework of foreign services, Each country has many distinctive features. In America, the Foreign Service Act of 1946 divided the American Foreign Service into five main categories. Number one is Chief of Mission, divided into four classes for salary purposes. Foreign Service Officers, the elite corps of the American Foreign Service, divided into seven classes. A top category of career ministers plus classes, that is 1 to 6, and then 3, then number 3 is foreign service, foreign service reserve officers in 6 classes who are assigned to the service on temporary basis, no more than 4 consecutive years. Then number 4, foreign service staff, foreign service staff officers and employees in 22 classes who perform technical, administrative, fiscal, clerical or custodial duties. And then number 5, alien clerks, and of course employees, personnel of the United States Foreign Service, nearly half of whom are alien employees, number over 20,000. Now, in the United Kingdom, a new diplomatic service comprising some 6,400 civil servants was created in January 1, 1965 to absorb the personnel in the former Foreign Service, Commonwealth Service, and Trade Commission Service. This new service has its own grade structure comparable to the grades of the administrative class, the executive class, and the clerical classes of the Home Civil Service. Now let us look at diplomatic duties. Diplomatic duties. Of course, I've actually talked about all of those things, okay, from our previous videos. So thank you very much.